I think I can make my point rather quickly, and I'll be following up on Mr. Philippo's presentation because I will give the legal perspective on this. But I'd like to take the discussion a bit out of the publishing industry. Imagine for 2 seconds that you're a researcher in political science and you want to see the evolution of the national sentiment in the Netherlands in filmmaking over the last 50 years. And you've developed this nice software that can go look at the beautiful build for the toekomst images for the future database, and you can have access, thanks to this software, to all the films and to all the visualization of the Dutch flag in the movies for the past 50 years. This is purely hypothetical, but this is really worthwhile information for someone who does research in social sciences and political sciences to see how often has the flag, the Dutch flag, been visible in films over the past 50 years. You can also make good analysis about it. And this is what text and data mining also means. It doesn't only mean text mining or data mining, but with the future development of software, you will also query images and recordings, and you will, it opens doors to research that have never been opened before. And it's also not just a question of increased production of articles. I know I'm a scholar, and my job is to publish articles. But what I really look forward is is exploring these new areas of knowledge, querying what could never been queried before, because now we can rely on software in a very innovative way. So this is why. Also imagine that you're an Egyptologist, choosing different words here, and that you want to query ancient scriptures to know, how was the woman's position in ancient Egypt, and you query the scriptures in a database held by a university. Now, these 2 examples are key to my discussion, because in the first one, of course, the films of the past 50 years, they are copyrighted. But the ancient scriptures, for my Egyptologist, they're not. They're absolutely public domain. So, but in both cases, you might be involving, or you might be affecting either copyright or another joker in the story, which hasn't been discussed previously before in the presentations, is the database right. So for copyright, think of the images for the future. The question to be asked, and this is what we discussed in the expert group on standardization with particular attention to text and data mining. I was part of this expert group for the DG Research and Innovation last March and April, and we produced a report that is downloadable from the website of the DG Research and Innovation. And one of the very first questions that we asked ourselves when we discussed the issue was, well, when we query a database filled with films to look for visualizations of the Dutch flag, is this an infringement of copyright? Are we dealing here with really a reproduction of the films? I dare say no. I say this is a non-expressive reproduction, which has actually no consequence on the exploitation of the works. We're just querying a bit like you would do reverse engineering software to get to the ideas behind it. You're getting here to the ideas embedded in the films. So this is my humble opinion. It should not account as an infringement of copyright. However, the law is not clear. And the law at the European level is not clear whether it is an infringement of the reproduction right or not. And subsequently, whether a limitation would apply. And there, if you're in the Netherlands, you're particularly disfortunate because in the Dutch Copyright Act there is no exception for research. there's an exception for educational purposes, but it says nothing about exception for research purposes. So in the Netherlands, you're not very comfortable with this. You know, if it's not clear whether it's an infringement or not, it certainly is not clear that you could benefit from any limitation to help you. In other countries across Europe, it's also not clear because it depends on the wording of the exception in the law itself. So generally, there's a lack of harmonization, and it may put some researcher at a disadvantage. So in some countries, you may be able to do it. In other countries, you may not. Now, what about my Egyptologist? My Egyptologist, he will say, well, I'm just querying public domain material. I mean, they're so old, there's not a shred of possibility that is even slight copyright on it. However, the maker of the database that collects all the transcripts of the ancient scriptures, he may claim a database right on it if he can demonstrate that he made a substantial investment in the collection, verification, and presentation of the transcripts online, and he may therefore also say that your querying of the scriptures constitutes a non-authorized extraction of his database, and that, you know, he would well, stop you from doing so. And, well, what about exceptions to the database right? Well, again, this is not clear, and it's not harmonized, so the same discussion as for copyright. So where are we? Now, the discussion at the European level has taken place mainly in terms of discussing with publishers to try to find grounds for a framework for licensing. Now, this was in the context of the Licenses for Europe, and there are, after 1 or 2 meetings of the working group on text and data mining, half of the room left, half of the participants left the room because they thought, well, that just talking about licenses from publishers did not address the issue, and the European Commission refused to broaden the scope of the mandate of the working group to inquire about other possibilities because, well, the people who left the room, including IViR and other organizations, thought that it was not the proper methodology to go about discussing the issue, and that if there was a matter to adopt a limitation on copyright and database right, it should be discussed. So now where are we? Well, text and data mining was part of the consultation of the European Commission. To be really honest, I haven't looked at all the results because the consultation is so broad and I'm involved in so many different topics that I left this one slightly on the side. But one promising example is that the UK did adopt in its Copyright Act in the spring of 2014 a specific text and data mining exception. So I think there is room for an exception. The exception, if adopted, should also take care that it cannot be set aside by contract or by technological protection measures, that researchers can actually exercise the limitation. And this is, I think, the message that will convey. I think it's in everybody's interest. It's the social benefit, not only in terms of production of scientific output, but also in exploring new ways and new frontiers in scientific research. This social benefit should be encouraged by law, and copyright and database rights should not be an obstacle. So this is my message. I hope that I was short enough. Thank you.